Today, we're going to continue our discussion on React Native, and we're going to wrap up our navigation discussion by talking about the next piece in the React Native navigation, which is the menuing or the drawer navigation. So previously, we have talked about the different kind of dependencies you need for React Native. We've talked about React navigation. We've talked about tab navigation. We've talked about things like stack navigation. So we basically continue on talking about the React Native library here. And of course, every time we want to use navigation, we have to use the base stack or the base library, which is native. The optional dependencies you typically need for any type of navigation will be things like reanimated, gesture handlers. We definitely need screens if we're going to be adding screens, safe area content, and masked views. Now, some of these are iOS or Android specific, but they are nice to have when you're trying to make your application feel more mobile friendly on the device that you're working on. The basic navigation we talked about is the navigation container. We talked about using buttons to use the navigation property to jump between screens. We talked about using stacks, where we could actually stack navigations, where we could add different screens together in kind of like a container. And then as we click through the container and go from screen to screen, we kind of have that back button that appears at the top of our navigation. And then last time we talked about tab navigation, which is probably the most common form of navigation on mobile devices. This is where we have those little tabs or little menu buttons at the top and bottom of the application to where we can just jump quickly between different navigation sets or stack sets. And that looks almost identical to the React Native, the stack navigation. And today it's almost going to be not much different when we deal with the drawer navigation. So essentially, just depending upon the type of navigation you want, is just going to be the different library that you use. So for stacking, we use stack. For tab, we use tab. And today you'll see that we use drawer for adding that menu. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about the drawer navigation of React Native. And it's essentially the component that renders the navigation drawer, which can be opened and closed via gestures. Drawers simply looks like this. You have a little menu button, or you can swipe from the left to the right, and then you can see the menu options or the drawer. So you have your home button, your settings, the different screens that you can jump to within your application that you want to select from your menu. Now, drawer navigation can be thought of as like a wardrobe or a dresser of drawers. What you do is you open up the drawer when you want to get something out. You find your item, you pull it out, or in this case, you click your screen, or you click the screen you want to go to, and then you close the drawer. So when you open the drawer, you have the option to select one of the items in the drawer, or in this case, one of the screens. Once you select it, the drawer automatically closes. If you made a mistake by clicking the menu and you don't want anything in the drawer, all you have to do is click in this little gray area here, and the drawer closes. The requirements we need for today to talk about React Native drawer is we still need the React Native library, and we also need the React navigation drawer library. The additional imports we're going to need is we're still going to need that navigation container, but we're also going to now need the create drawer navigator. And that's going to come from the React navigation drawer library. So does anyone have any questions about React Native and the React Native drawer navigator that we're going to be looking at today?
Not at this time.
Okay. If everyone's clear, we will jump out into the demo. Like the previous ones, this is going to be more hands-on. We're going to get our hands dirty and kind of build on what we've been learning. One other thing I would like to mention, though, about React. So we talked about React Native before with the stack navigation. So the stack navigator, how it works is it works by pushing and popping the screens into the main window here. So when you actually push on the stack, it moves the screen over to another screen. Now that's nice. However, with drawer, when you select one of the screens here, you're replacing the screen that is in the main window. You're not actually adding or removing from the stack. It's a replacement. So that's just one distinction I wanted to point out here. It's off. All right, so let's go to terminal. Whoop, oh, what happens when you have multiple screens? All right, can everyone clearly see this? Is that big enough?
Yep.
Cool, thank you. All right, so I'm going to navigate to my development folder. And inside my development folder, I have a React workspace. All right, and just to show you what we're going to be building today, let me start an existing project I've already built. And we still use Expo. So when Expo starts, we start it within our application directory, and then we can open up an iOS simulator or an Android simulator. And once we do Expo start, it will load the application into our emulator. Take just a second to load. I didn't mean to close this before class, but I accidentally did. Loading all the updates. This is one thing you will run into every now and then when dealing with Expo or React Native. They're constantly updating the libraries, so you will have to constantly keep updating your emulators as well. So today we are going to build this application here. We're going to have a home screen. We are going to have a notification screen. And then we are also going to have a settings screen. So we're going to start by building 3 screens. Then we're going to add some navigation to those screens where we can click a button and go to the different screens. And then we're going to add a slide deck here, the drawer for the main menu, with some options to go to our different screens. And then finally, we're going to add the little menu button here so that we can very quickly just click the button to bring up our drawer. Otherwise, we'd have to manually swipe left and right. Minimize this. All right, we'll stop the existing one. Okay, let's create a new project here. All right, so we're going to do expo init, and we will call this one example. Oops, no space. App. We're going to create a blank project. This will just build our basic template for us to work with React Native. It'll take just a second to install the dependencies. While this installs, let me go briefly over what we're going to do in this first example. So in our first example here, we're going to create a basic drawer-based navigation. So we're going to create that mobile app here with 3 screens. We're going to have home, navigation, and settings. And we are going to add all 3 of those screens to the dashboard. Okay, our application finished. So we're going to go into our application like it says here, cd our example drawer app. Now, the first thing we need to do in here, though, is we have to actually install the React navigation libraries so that we can use them with our application. So we need to first install, let me minimize this just. Minimize the, let me minimize the text. All right, we'll just leave it as is. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the React Navigate library. And you have to do this for each of your projects. You can't do this globally. And you really don't want to do this globally, because if we actually install these dependencies at a global level of your machine, then that means when you go to build your application and push them out to the stores, you might actually be installing a whole bunch of libraries and packages that you don't need, essentially bloating your app. So next, we want to install the navigation stack, because we'll need that for the third example today. We will also need to install the drawer. And I will go ahead and also install all the optional dependencies that we need, like React Native Reanimated, gestures, screens, context, and the community mask view. I find more often than not, I end up needing something from one of these libraries, so I just include it with my build. All right, so that gave us our React Native, our stack, our drawer, our optional dependencies. So now we have everything installed. So let's go look at the code. So I'm using Visual Studio, so we'll just type code from our console, and this will open up Visual Studio's code. All right, that's open. And while I have Visual Studios open, let me actually start the app so we can see our changes real time. All right, and I reload. There we go. Sometimes when you have the emulator up, when you start a new app, you have to deploy it to the iOS or to the device, and then you have to force a reload in order to reload your application. The emulator is nice, but it can be a little buggy.